Okay, hello again, everyone. So this is the latest of my videos for introducing international relations, and today we're going to be talking about sovereignty. So my advice, same as always, please watch the video start to finish one time. Just try and understand as much as you can, and then the second time you watch it, start and stop, check the vocabulary, listen carefully, um, and then you will be able to increase your understanding, I hope. And if you like this video, please like this video. So same as always, I will use a PowerPoint presentation and talk you through the PowerPoint presentation. So here is the PowerPoint presentation, and our topic today, as I said, is sovereignty. And of course, sovereignty, in some ways, a very simple idea, but of course has many layers, to it. So let's start with the, simple idea of sovereignty. Now, sovereignty just means independence or autonomy. Or we could also say no interference. And of course, independence means you freely decide by yourself. And autonomy also means you choose by yourself. And no interference means no one tells you what to do. So this is a very simple definition of the meaning of sovereignty. We have these two other words here that are connected, and we'll talk later a little bit about these, but we have this word authority and this word responsibility. Now, of course, individuals have sovereignty. And of course, this means that individuals have freedom and individuals have independence. And this means we're free to choose. And this means we control things by ourselves, in principle. And of course, we raise our children this way. I mean, when children are young, they don't have so much independence and they don't have so much freedom. But as they get older, they have more independence and more freedom, and they can make more decisions by themselves. So we raise our children in a way that is based on this idea of individual sovereignty. And we also have this connection between sovereignty and freedom. And of course, if we think about freedom, it also is a very simple thing, but again, it has many layers. So, of course, if you have total freedom, imagine you live in this hut in the middle of nature, and you get all your own food. You have no electricity. You don't meet other people. You have total freedom here. But of course, the only order you have is the order you can create. You live in a state of nature. And of course, this means there's some danger there. And importantly, too, this is not a society. In societies, we live together. We live in groups. And so for this, we need rules. And with these rules, we make peace and security. And then with this, we can make real freedom. So we have this kind of pure freedom, but it's connected to danger. And then we have this kind of practical freedom in a society, and this needs some rules and regulations. And another key point with freedom is it's connected to responsibility. In fact, I think we can say that if this is freedom, then this is responsibility. So it's two sides of the same coin. We probably should talk about this more in our societies, but we don't seem to talk about it so much. And I'm sure you understand this. If you want freedom, you have to be responsible. You have to be responsible for this freedom. If you want choice, you have to be responsible for this choice. And another aspect of this is that your freedom is my responsibility, and my freedom is your responsibility. Because we live in a society, we are all responsible for other people's freedom. So this is a key point with freedom in a society. Now, don't forget that when we're talking about freedom, we're connecting freedom with the idea of today's talk, which is sovereignty. Now, we also have a connection between freedom and cooperation, and we can see here it's a kind of trade-off. So we have to give up some freedom so that we can cooperate. And of course, this means that if you cooperate, of course, you have to work together. And this means you have to give up some of your freedom to work together. And the reason we do this, of course, is because we get a big benefit from cooperation. And of course, cooperation is the key to success. With cooperation, we can do more things because there are many things we cannot do alone. And because we can do more things, we can produce more, which means we can get more. We can increase our living standard. Now, this is a very simple view of history, but if we go back tens of thousands of years, then humans lived in quite small groups, of course cooperating, but the society was very small. But over time, over the last few thousand years, with agriculture, our societies became bigger and more complex, and we established kind of states and civilizations. And then, of course, we have our modern society, which is extremely complex and global. So over this period of time, we have expanding cooperation, and increasing complexity of cooperation. So if we look at the connection between individuals in society, then what we do is we create these kind of social institutions in society. And the purpose of these social institutions is to help us to cooperate. But of course, we have to give some of our freedom, give some of our sovereignty to these institutions. And in exchange, we get these rules. And of course, these rules help us to cooperate. So then, of course, this idea of freedom here is connected to sovereignty. We give some authority, some control, or some power to these social institutions. We give up some independence. And of course, the benefit we get through these rules is we get some security and cooperation, and we can increase our productivity. There's, of course, a hierarchy of these social institutions, and we can probably say that the smallest one at the lowest level is the family. And of course, the family is built on cooperation between the members of the family. And then at the top, of course, we have the state. And we'll talk about this a little bit in a minute. And then between these two, of course, we have very many different types of social institution. So schools and companies and sports clubs, these are all types of social institutions. And of course, all of these are necessary in order to help us to cooperate with each other. So if we look at the example of the state, in a country such as Japan, the citizens give some authority to the state. And of course, we can vote and we can choose our government. And in return for this, we get laws, we get rules, and of course we have some control over our lives. And of course, this is in popular sovereignty, where we can vote for our government. Of course, not all states are built like this. But of course, what we're talking about here is international relations. So we have some international society. What we've been talking about until now was a national society or a domestic society. We also have an international society of states. But this international society is in some ways like our society. So the states also have sovereignty. And this means that the states also have independence, and states also have autonomy. The states have the ability to choose and to decide by themselves. And of course, the state system took thousands of years to develop, so it's very, very old. But we can say the modern state system began with the Treaty of Westphalia in 1648. And this established some principles of international relations, so the relations between states in this international society. And one of these principles was sovereignty, meaning that the state has control over its citizens and its territory, and states cannot interfere in other states. And equality, all states are equal. And of course, this became international law, and we call this the Westphalian system of states. And this is also in the United Nations Charter, which was signed in 1945 at the end of World War II. And the United Nations has some principles which it uses to guide its action. And these are set out in Article 2 of the Charter. And these are two parts of Article 2. So the organization is based on the principle of the sovereign equality. So here we have these two ideas of sovereignty and equality of all its members. And all members shall not interfere in the territorial integrity or political independence of any state. So again, we have this idea of non-interference and independence of states. So this idea of sovereignty is a basic principle of international relations. But of course, states, like citizens, must cooperate. So in the international system, we also have this balance between sovereignty and international cooperation. So states also must give up some of their sovereignty for international cooperation. And some examples of this are trade, where you're giving up some independence because you become dependent on your trading partner. Of course, the benefit is you get increased productivity. But we also have international law, so states must follow international law in the same way as citizens must follow law. States must follow international law. We also have alliances, international organizations. There are many, many examples of international cooperation. So the key question, of course, is how do states protect their sovereignty? Well, the same way we protect our sovereignty is we get strong. So we build up our financial security. We build up our capacity, our ability to do things. So it's strength and smarts. So some kinds of power and some kinds of, what should we say, brain power. And of course, one of the key parts of this is a strong economy. So all states recognize that strong state equals strong economy. But of course, if we think about this, then we can very quickly see that not all states are equal. Some states have very, very strong economies, very, very big economies. Some states not. So this is the same, of course, in domestic societies, where not everyone is equal. Of course, different people have very different abilities and situations. But in international society, we have the principle of equality, but of course, in practice, it's not true. So what kind of challenges do we have to this idea of sovereignty, its state independence? Well, of course, the first one is conflict or war. And of course, the purpose of war between states is to protect sovereignty or to take away the other side's sovereignty. Or there might be a civil war where one group in the state is trying to challenge the state's authority and trying to become independent. Another challenge to sovereignty is environmental issues. So environmental issues don't follow the same borders as states. So they tend to be transnational issues. So we have the examples here of ocean pollution. And of course, the ocean borders on to many, many states. Or we have air pollution, which of course can easily travel over national borders. And of course, states also create these international organizations, and the purpose of these, like our societies, institutions are to help us to cooperate. These international organizations, international institutions are to help international cooperation. And of course, security alliance, like the security alliance between Japan and America. We get a benefit of increasing our security, but we have to carefully cooperate. And of course, this can become an issue with sovereignty. Now, if we look at the European Union, we can see this idea of pooled sovereignty. So pool means to bring together. So what has happened in the EU is that member states have given up some sovereignty to the EU. So they've given up some independence or some authority or some freedom of decision making to the EU, so above the state. And the benefit, of course, is they get increased security and more cooperation, more productivity from the bigger one market of the EU. And we call this pooled sovereignty. So this is just given you some very small introduction to the issue of sovereignty in international relations. Sovereignty is a core principle of the international state system, as we can see here. This is a very familiar map of the world, which is full of states. These are sovereign states. But we should also say that this issue of sovereignty is ever-changing and very, very complex. Thank you very much for listening. I hope to make some more of these video lectures soon, so please continue to watch. Okay, thank you very much.